All right, welcome to the deeper dive. Dave Lochran, Adam Shar, LOUGHY_D on Twitter. You see it right there. And Ship My Money DFS. Glad to be with you. Glad to turn the page after that 5-game ugly slate yesterday. We got 15 games on the docket today. Oh, and Adam, I should point out that reading the chat, the YouTube chat yesterday, somebody had guaranteed. I don't remember who it was. It was one of our viewers. Someone had guaranteed a Franmil Reyes home run. So props to you there, big fella. I don't remember your name, but if I did, I'd sure shout you out. But this is such a better slate than before, Adam. A ton of quality pitching, which makes it a little bit difficult to find bats you love. But there's also enough pretty rough pitching as well. Like I think I could fill out a lineup pretty nicely. And a lot of the bats that I like today are cheaper than usual as well. This is a good slate.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good slate too. Josh and I talked about it this morning that I think it's a pretty fun tournament slate because you can see where ownership's going to be, kind of clustered at pitching. And then for bats, I expect it to be spread out for the most part because, we do have a Coors game. We have the game in Texas, and then we have 13 other games. So I think it's a pretty fun tournament slate where you can go a lot of different directions.
All right. So let's just jump into it. We got Jake and Josh coming up after us at 6 o'clock, going to take you out to lock. We got 15 games to talk about. So we'll do our best to get through all of this, which we will in a concise fashion, but also get to all of the important nuggets throughout the show. John Gant, Eric Freddie, you and I talk a lot throughout the day, off air, off stream. And we both, I think, came upon this independently. St. Louis makes for a really, really interesting stack and one that I really like against Freddie today, who every time the guy's had good results at the minor league level. Every time he's been called up, he's struggled against righties. The power numbers are astronomical. It's hot. It's humid at Nationals Park, as you pointed out. This is a good spot. And you look on DraftKings, you're talking about pricing on some of these bats outside of Matt Carpenter. Munoz is 3,800. Martinez is 4,100. Ozuna's 4K. Yadier Molina 3,800. These guys are very affordable. Paul DeJong, I think, 4,200. Very easy team to work into lineups, and I'm not sure they're going to be one of the more popular teams at all on this slate.
Yeah, I don't think Eric Fede is a terrible pitcher. I mean, you mentioned that he has decent minor league numbers. He has the pedigree, and he has made some improvements against righties this year compared to last year. Last year, he was throwing a changeup about 30% of the time to right-handed hitters and getting absolutely blasted. This year, it's more of a cutter slider combination for him. So he's been a little bit more effective, but still not great. But what I really like about the Cardinals team, you mentioned their price tags, especially on DraftKings. You can get a lot of upside just by going there, and you can fill out your roster with other guys that you like. But also, they cover some of the weaker positions on the slate. Yairo Munoz is a good play at second base. He also fits into that stack, obviously. Paul DeJong is a good shortstop option and takes care of a pretty weak position there. Even third base isn't the greatest position, I don't think, and you can use Matt Carpenter to take care of that, at least on DraftKings. So all of that, I think it just makes for really good roster construction. But also, you have a pretty bad Washington bullpen and a Washington team that, for all intents and purposes, isn't playing for anything anymore. So if the Cardinals can get a bunch of runs early and kind of blow the game open, you're going to get a lot of young, probably not very good relievers out of this Washington bullpen. The weather's great for hitting. I mean, it's kind of tough to breathe if you walk outside here. So I do like the Cardinals from an upside standpoint. And with there being 15 games, with there being a Coors game and a game in Texas, I just can't imagine that they're high enough owned where I would want to fade them.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And this is one of the reasons why I like them a lot. I mean, I think pricing definitely comes into play as well. They're very affordable. The one thing that is weird on this slate is there's a few positions, Adam, that really aren't that enticing. I think second base with Munoz at second base now batting second. That's really, I like him a lot. But for 15 games, you'd be hard pressed to argue that second base is very deep. I mean, third base has some plays, sure, but I don't know if there's anyone that's crucial. And then you could say the same for a few other positions. Shortstop, there's like 3 or 4 guys that I really like. And trying to work in 4 and 4 stacks is difficult with the Tim Andersons and the De Jongs and the Machados. That's the one spot I keep running into trouble with. I wish they had multi-position eligibility.
Yeah, I mentioned shortstop as being a weak position, but you're right. I actually don't think it's that weak on this one. But DeJong is one of the guys that I truly like, so it's not like I'm taking a guy that I'm not really that confident in. So yeah, I mean, I just think that it gives you a lot of upside here because of the way that the positions that it covers. Also on DraftKings, you have Yadi Molina, taking up the catcher position if you want to go there. So yeah, I just think it's a pretty high upside spot for them.
Yeah, I think it's weak in terms of depth, but it has like 3 or 4 guys that I really like, and that's really all we need. What about on the opposite side of this game? John Gant on the bump for St. Louis facing this Washington Nationals team. Gant's been pretty solid. I mean, he's much better against righties, hasn't been terrible against lefties, but his ex-WOBA, ex-ISO are pretty high. You've got Eaton, Harper, Soto, Defoe in the lineup as your left-handed bats. Any interest here in this Washington team?
I'm not as high on the Nats as I am on the Cardinals. Gant's just been, pretty good this year. He has a very good changeup. It grades out as his best pitch. He can use it to both sides of the plate effectively. If you go through the Nats roster and, just look at guys that can hit changeups well, it's basically Bryce Harper. So I like Bryce Harper as a one-off. Obviously, he's a really good hitter. He matches up well with Gant. And I don't mind the Nats as a full stack just because obviously they're in the same very good hitting weather that the Cardinals are. But I feel better about the Cardinals because I think that they're facing the inferior pitcher. They're facing a very bad bullpen, and they're priced more affordably.
Yeah, for me, it's more so Cardinals here. I do like Soto and Harper as one-offs, but not as much of a stack that I'm looking at here, especially because Gant has been pretty good against righties, Adam. And I know this is a Washington team that when they score, they can score in bunches, but I have a decent amount of respect for Gant, especially the way he's been pitching this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's move on. For anyone just tuning in now that didn't catch the initial beginning of the stream, we're pretty high on this Cardinal stack, being that we expect some low ownership and their pricing is really solid. Also, you can work them in at some shallow positions. So Cardinals bats, right-handers, of course, and Derek Lowe. Yes, we are taking questions. We'll get to them throughout the show, preferably during the game we're speaking of, just to kind of streamline the process. But yeah, any questions, pop them in chat, YouTube, Twitch. We got all of you guys covered. So of course we'll take some questions. Let's move on, Adam. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, Joe Musgrove and Cody Reed. We may be on different sides here. This is a game that I just really don't have much interest in, and I've tried. Like oh, how about Starling Marte? Cody Reed, though, in terms of limiting base runners, this guy does not. He is really solid at holding stolen bases or preventing stolen bases. And then Musgrove, he's not a terrible pitcher. He's much better against righties, does give up some pop to lefties, but it's not a great park. Do you share the same sentiment, or are you targeting this game?
I think we're pretty similar. I'm not looking to the Reds bats here. It's a park downgrade for them. They're facing a pitcher that I have respect for in Musgrove, and the hitters that you would mostly be interested in. For the most part, they play positions where it's not that hard to find upside with Joey Votto and Suarez. So I'm not really interested in the Reds here. The Pirates, there's no individual hitter that I love. But I do think that there's upside in the form of full stacks. Cody Reed can struggle with his control at times and just put a lot of guys on base. He isn't a terrible pitcher, but he's very capable of coming out and having really, really bad games. And then it's a Cincinnati bullpen, behind him that actually is pretty decent against right-handed hitters. They have some good right-handed arms out there. But I still don't mind taking my chances there, especially where the Pirates are cheap. Like if you look at their prices, I think it's more of a FanDuel stack than a DraftKings stack because it's not a great park for home runs. It's not a spot where I expect them to hit a lot of home runs, but they do have the potential to just string together big innings here. And that obviously is more valuable on FanDuel because of the scoring than it is on DraftKings. And then on top of that, you have Jose Osuna and Jordan Luplow batting 5th and 6th, both minimum price. And actually Pablo Reyes batting 7th also. But Osuna and Luplow, actually guys that I'd be interested in. So if I went to the Pirates, I don't mind them as a full stack on FanDuel.
All right. Yeah, I don't mind moving on from this game, though. It's not one that I think you need to target. I think we could both agree. We had a question in chat that said lowest owned stack on DraftKings trying to get different. Well, yeah, certainly going to get different if you're stacking Pittsburgh or Cincinnati, Adam.
Yeah, for sure. And just in general, I think that on a slate like this, ownership isn't quite as important. Like, there's give me a lot of teams that when you talk about a full stack, they're like 3% owned, just because ownership gets spread out so much.
We had a question. I want to hit it real quick. Derek Lowe asks, Herman plus Beeks or Giolito plus Ray in a single entry tournament?
I'd like one from each side of that, but
I know you like Herman and Giolito, which is exactly what I'm targeting in
yeah,
most
I know
lineups.
I would say Ray and Giolito.
Yeah, Ray and Giolito. But if you there are, I'll tell you this much: there are a lot of ways to get Herman Giolito and then build a really sexy lineup around it. Like very easy to do. So don't pigeonhole yourself into going all the way down. I actually don't think you need to go to super cheap guys. Giolito is one of those that is what 6,300, and he should be able to get the job done. We'll get to him in a little while. Tampa Bay and Toronto, Adam Ryan Barucki and Ryan Stanek, another bullpen game here for Tampa Bay. As the guy just asked us in chat with Jalen Beeks, it looks like Beeks will be the long relief in this game, if you even want to call it that at this point. And then Ryan Barucki on the opposite side for Toronto, who has done a very solid job of limiting power for the most part, Adam, at least until recently. But this guy can't hold runners for the life of him.
Yeah. So as far as Beaks goes, I just don't see the need to go there on this slate. It's a 15-game slate. There's 30 pitchers. You have on the two pitcher sites, which obviously is the only place you'd be considering him. You have just such an obvious value play in Giolito, but then you also have other guys you can go to for cheap. And with Beaks, we talked about it yesterday before they announced that Chirinos was actually going to be the one pitching, that he's just been all over the place in terms of how much he actually pitches in these spots. One game he'll go out there and throw 90 plus, then he'll go out and throw 3 innings. So it just is a lot of risk to take on, especially when he's not absolutely minimum priced here, and it's not the easiest matchup in the world. So I don't have interest in Beaks. I'm not really targeting the Toronto bats either, just because it's a good enough Tampa bullpen and there's enough hitting spots here that I don't feel like I need to. On the other side, though, Ryan Barucki, I just don't think he's as good of a pitcher as he has been so far this year. He does struggle to hold runners, like you said. The one guy that I really, really like from Tampa Bay here is Tommy Pham batting second. Barucki's another guy who's very reliant on his changeup. He uses it to keep right-handed hitters off balance and has some success there. Obviously, a small sample size, but going back to the start of last season against left-handed changeups, Tommy Pham has an expected WOBA over 400. He has an ISO between 300 and 400. He also has speed and can run here. So I like him a lot as a one-off. I expect he probably goes a little bit overlooked. CJ Cron makes for a fine play. We know he has plenty of power. Those are the two guys that I would, like as one-offs. Malik Smith obviously has speed. Willie Adames can do some damage here, but I'm not prioritizing anyone except for Tommy Pham from this team.
Yeah, I agree. Another interesting thing about Tommy Pham, you see a lot of guys with speed, and it's like their stolen base splits are 20 against righties and 2 against lefties, 15 against righties, 1 against lefties. Tommy Pham, and I don't see why runners would hesitate, but he hasn't over the last couple of seasons. Pretty balanced in terms of stolen bases against lefties, despite a whole lot less plate appearances. So, people talk again about lefties being tougher to steal. And Tommy Pham's actually had more success against them for whatever reason, not something I've dug into. He's really the only hitter or player from this game that I think I have any interest in, Adam. Maybe I'm missing something, but I think you could obviously look towards a CJ Cron if you wanted to, batting cleanup here. But Tommy Pham for me batting second here against Barucki in a spot where he could hit for a bit of power, but also has the upside on the base paths. It's really the only guy I have much interest in.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good point that you brought up, though, about the running on lefties, because it's kind of a comfort factor. A lot of times to steal on left-handed pitchers, you have to be comfortable just going on their first move,
right?
And being good at reading if they're coming to first, but also just being willing kind of to get picked off sometimes. And some guys are more comfortable with that than others, so it certainly doesn't hurt that Pham has a history of being able to run on lefties.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd be curious to look into that too, to see what it is. Get an interview from the guy and see what he says. But I don't think that'll be happening anytime soon. So don't hold your breath. Cleveland and Kansas City. Mike Clevenger, Danny Duffy. Talk to me about this, about Danny Duffy right now. We've seen a decline in his fastball velocity for what, the second or third time this season alone?
Yeah, I mean it's just kind of all over the place. He was sitting up around 93 miles an hour 2 starts ago. Last start he was below 91. So really have no idea where it's going to be at. And it's just such a tough matchup for him going into Cleveland and facing this Cleveland lineup that I don't have any interest in Duffy. I do think that Cleveland we have this. It's going to be the same issue with Cleveland that we always have. Like I really like Francisco Lindor. I really like Ramirez. I really like Encarnacion. I hate Yandy Diaz. I hate Brandon Guyer. I hate Melky Cabrera. I hate everyone in the lineup not named Lindor, Ramirez, and Encarnacion.
Pretty much. Like every single time they face a lefty. Because you get Brandon Guyer jammed in the middle of the order, which you have no interest in. You're not looking to play Jason Kipnis facing a lefty. Roberto Perez. I guess what you're saying is if you're stacking this team, you're probably just going 1 through 4 and dump. But another thing, you can't go 1 through 4 because of Yandy Diaz. Right. Yeah.
I'll be using Cleveland as in some mini sacks and one-offs.
Right. With Yandy Diaz and at least on DraftKings and Ramirez, I doubt you're not gonna say, all right, well, I don't need Ramirez in this stack. I'll go with Yandy Diaz instead.
I mean, make a lot of sense. It like Brandon Guyer, people were asking about it in chat, and he's a fine play as long as Duffy's in the game. But the thing is, he's just gonna come out of the game as soon as Duffy does. And he's cheap enough where, if you have pitching you really like and one-offs you really like with a Cleveland stack, then I guess, sure, put Guyer in, especially on FanDuel where there is more value in him, getting base hits and scoring runs. But as a one-off, just don't do it because he's not a home run hitter anyway, and he's probably not going to get a full allotment of at-bats. And even in a stack, it's just feels pretty gross.
Yeah, it's not a spot that I think you even need to go to. Plus, a few third basemen in really, really favorable spots. I'm not there. Or I'm sorry, with Brandon, I'm talking about Diaz, but with Guyer as well. I don't see the need to go there. A couple of cheaper guys that I like. Now, granted, at his price point, he's so cheap that it's not going to kill you by going there. But as you said, the moment a lefty, the moment a righty comes in, he's getting pinch hit for. There's no question. So you better hope that he produces in his 2, potentially 3 plate appearances. He is cheap enough, though. If you need that, go for it. But again, I don't think you need that. I don't think it's necessary. So I'm not really interested in Brandon Guyer. Now, what about Mike Clevenger? You're not going to hear a whole lot about him today because you have Justin Verlander priced above him at 12.3. You have Rich Hill against the Mets at $10,000 on DraftKings. You have Herman Marquez at 93. You got Robbie Ray at 89. I mean, Mike Clevenger's kind of in no man's land here.
Yeah, it's just tough for me. It's obviously a really good matchup against Kansas City. It's a Kansas City lineup now that does have a lot more strikeouts in there. But the problem for me at least, is that on DraftKings you have Clevenger at, what is he, 11? Yeah, 11,000
flat.
And when you talk about range of outcomes, he's another one of these pitchers. There's a couple on this slate we'll talk about who just is not very efficient. So normally his good games kind of run more in that 24 to 28 point range and not the 30 to 35, which when you're talking about someone at an $11,000 price tag on a slate that has as much upside at pitcher as this one does, it makes it really hard to go there because, you're getting him at lower ownership, which is nice, but you're also sacrificing money on DraftKings because he's more expensive than, Wood and Marquez and Hill, Marquez and Ray. So it's kind of tough there. And then on FanDuel, he's 9,900, which is nice, but Verlander's only 11,000. And I kind of it's going to sound weird, but to me, it just kind of looking at likely outcomes, I feel like on FanDuel, it's just really hard for me to go anywhere between Verlander and Marquez. Like Marquez is as high as I'm willing to pay without just going to Verlander.
Yeah. I don't think I'm not going Clevenger here. By the way, I know we're having some problems with the stream, trying to get that fixed and worked on. If you have any questions, anything you missed, let us know and we'll get to you for sure. How many lineups you playing today?
10 on FanDuel, 1 on DraftKings.
Okay. How much Clevenger?
Probably none.
Yeah, I don't think I'm doing it either. I think the problem is that again, there's someone above him and there are 2 or 3 guys below him, not too far below him. They just make too much sense to me. I don't like to get too much into the home road splits, Adam, but he has been a little bit, you know what? Those are actually balancing out the more that I look at it. Hell, for a month ago, they were far more extreme than they are now. So I think Clevenger's a fine play. I have nothing against Clevenger against the Royals team that ranks in the basement in almost every category against right-handed pitching. I mean, it's a rough team. They strike out not a lot in terms of their active roster, but still not a good team. I just think that you can get the same, if not better value, point per dollar value elsewhere. And Clevenger is not coming cheap anymore. I mean, how should Clevenger really be this much more than Rich Hill or even Herman Marquez is the question.
Right, and that's the problem for me. I don't think so. I also probably am higher on Marquez than most people, but I can't pay more money for Clevenger than for Marquez. I don't really care that Marquez is pitching in Coors.
Right. And Marquez has been a whole lot better at Coors lately. We'll get to that game shortly. I want to talk about Miami and Philadelphia. Trevor Richards has got this changeup working. I mean, it's on a string right now, Adam. The pitch has been so nasty. And I don't know if everyone's caught up to it. He's getting 43% whiffs per swing on his changeup over the last 2 months, and he's throwing it 40% of the time, right? His K rate from April through June was 20%. From July to now, it's 26.5%. And now you're facing a Phillies team that can't push a run across the plate to save their lives. He's got a great park. He's given up like 0.7 home runs per 9 here. And he's been very good against left-handed hitters. I know what you're going to say, and we'll get to Giolito in a moment. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lefties plus a pitcher and Kingery, who's basically dead in the lineup. This is a good spot for Richards, and we saw what Jose Urena did yesterday. I'm not sleeping on Richards to go out there and post another 20-plus fantasy point game or better.
Yeah, I like Richards a lot. He's been someone I've been playing like all season long, and he finally started throwing his changeup to right-handed hitters over the last couple of months, which is why his strikeout percentage has gone through the roof. The issues that I have with Richards, so obviously it's a good park too. It's a good matchup in terms of strikeouts. On DraftKings, he's 7,300, which just in terms of at least optimal plays, he's $1,000 more than Lucas Giolito, who I think is my favorite SP2. So if you wanted to pair him with Giolito and jam in a bunch of bats, then fine. But it's just hard for me to use Richards as an SP2 instead of Giolito. So that's my issue there. On FanDuel, he's easily my favorite cheap pitcher if I need one. He's $6,600. My concern here, though, is that while we do see a lot of strikeouts from Richards, we do see him also struggle to go very deep into games. And this is a Philadelphia team that we know can drive up pitch counts. So where you need the quality start to really have an effective outing on FanDuel as a pitcher, he doesn't get it all that often. He doesn't make it through 6 innings that much. So the price tag's really nice, and he will be the guy that I go to kind of at that bottom tier of pitching if I need it. But just kind of have concerns about him on both sides.
Do you think it's at all necessary to pair him with Giolito? If
Not
you
really.
wanted to get this, I don't think it is. And I've tried it out. Like I've tried it out. I got 20 lineups on DraftKings, and I'm thinking like maybe this could get me where I want to go. But I think with the bats I'm targeting, I don't need to go there. I don't need to go that cheap today, which kind of harkens back to the question about Jalen Beeks, Adam, or really anyone that low. I don't. Actually, Peaks is $6,000. He's not even that cheap. You don't need to completely bottom out the pitcher position tonight. I think 6,300 for Giolito, 73 for Richards. To some extent, gets you everything you want, unless you're going, off the board with like a Red Sox stack, right? Like
right.
a low on Red Sox.
That was going to be my example. Like Richards is basically the guy that I'm like keeping in my back pocket. Like if I build a team, like if I stack the Red Sox was going to be the example I use, and I want good hitters with them, and I need a cheap pitcher, Trevor Richards is that guy because I do think he's good. I do think it's a good spot, but I just don't think that it's necessary. I don't think it's a slate where there are so many really good expensive hitters and so few cheap good hitters that I'm like just going to force in Richards, Giolito, and then just jam in all these bats because it's pretty suboptimal.
Right, that's where I'm at too. I do like Richards though. I mean, I don't think we can deny that the adjustments that he's made over the past couple months, Adam, have made him a legitimate fantasy viable pitcher.
Yeah, absolutely. The strikeouts are there. And I mean, they'd been there against lefties the entire season. It was just a matter of against righties, he refused to throw his changeup grades out as an 80 pitch, which you don't really get very often.
Right.
And he was just not throwing it to righties. So he was throwing his below average fastball and his terrible slider and not using his changeup. He finally started throwing it, and now he strikes out, 26% of guys.
Yeah. 6+ strikeouts in 6 of his last 7 starts. Another nice thing about Trevor Richards is it's tough to I don't like to say he has a long leash. He doesn't. He's inefficient, but if he's moving, he's going to go over 100 pitches. You just have to hope that he's not super inefficient, because I think you had mentioned something to me earlier today. He does struggle to get through 6 frames.
Yeah, he walks guys and he strikes guys out. So that runs into, granted, he has a lot of games between 5 and 6, but he hasn't gone 6 innings in any of his last 5 starts, in 3 of his last 10. So not that says anything about what he's going to do tonight. It's just that it is a legitimate concern because he walks guys, he strikes guys out, and this Philadelphia team will make you work deep in counts.
Agreed. Malcolm has a question. We'll get to that when we hit our positions. We're talking about DK catchers in tournaments. I will throw one out there, though. I think I'll go back to St. Louis. I think Molina's a great tournament play at 3,800. Adam, obviously Wellington Castillo, but if he's talking about tournament plays low on guys, Castillo's going to have a good amount of ownership batting third there. So you got anyone to add to the mix?
Austin Hedges.
All right, Austin Hedges. We mix him in there as well against Robbie Ray at Chase Field. Outside of Trevor Richards, I'm not really doing anything here. I feel like Arrieta should be below 7K right now.
Yeah, especially outside of Philly. Like, we see his strikeouts go up in Philly. Like, we see pretty much every pitcher on the Phillies. It's a park that generates strikeouts. But now it's just not a high strikeout matchup. He's not a high strikeout pitcher. He'll probably do fine, but I just don't see the need to roster him. The only hitter that I have any interest in, I think, is Drupal Cabrera. Is kind of interesting on FanDuel. He's only 2,800, and he's the only guy on the team really that's in the lineup that actually has good numbers against right-handed changeups this year. 335 expected WOBA, 248 expected ISO, only a 10% swinging strike rate. If anyone gets to Richards, Cabrera would be the guy that I expect does it.
All right. Yeah, I mean, another thing too about Arrieta, not a ton of win equity with this offense behind them right now. I mean, they've just looked awful. What's that?
He is playing the Marlins, though.
No. I'm saying getting any run support from his offense.
Yeah. But I was just saying, like, he's playing the Marlins. They're still pretty likely to
win. Played the Marlins yesterday, and how'd that turn? They lost 3 of 5 to the damn Mets. This team stinks, Adam. Don't be short-sighted here, fella. This is not a good baseball team right now. But point well taken. Let's talk Boston and Atlanta. Rick Porcello and Sean Newcomb. I'm hearing some chatter about the Boston stack. Josh Engelman and I, during the process yesterday, talked a lot about Boston being virtually unowned in the day slate. The stack did come through very late. Look, it was not a comfortable one, and fortunately, the whole slate was low scoring. So 8 runs on no home runs from Boston was enough to get the job done. But having said that, Adam, they're facing a pretty solid pitcher in Sean Newcomb, who has been very up and down lately, no doubt. I mean, he has had some games where he's looked like a shell of himself from what we've seen earlier this season. But no, I think it's at least worth acknowledging that Boston should once again be an overlooked team. I just don't know if I'm looking to go here against Sean Newcomb. I still don't know if I'm doing it.
I'll definitely have at least one Boston stack out of my 10. And it's just an upside play, and it's that they're so expensive relative to other good plays on the slate that it's basically going to force them to not be as highly owned as their talent would dictate. I don't really like any of them as one-offs because I do think Newcomb's a pretty good pitcher, and he does a good job of limiting power against right-handed hitters. He's been reverse splits going back to his time in the minors. But I like a full stack here because when you look at the type of pitcher that Newcomb is, he has really good stuff and he limits power, but he also walks a lot of guys. This is a very patient Boston offense, and I think if he's struggling with his control, they'll do the maximum amount of damage there, get his pitch count up, get him out of the game, and get a lot of base runners against him before he leaves. So I think it's a spot where they're a lot more valuable having 4 or 5 of them in your lineup to correlate with each other and get maximum upside when Newcomb does have a bad game, because you're not very often going to get Newcomb going out there and giving up like 3 solo home runs.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. It's also another thing that's kind of interesting too, though, is the Braves do have a good bullpen. I mean, when you just look alone on their active roster, and I don't know who we're going to be seeing today, because I don't know how long Newcomb's going to last. If he's inefficient and he's walking guys, and giving up, back-to-back walks with an RBI single, that's how I see this game going. Braves have the lowest home run per 9 rate in the league out of the bullpen in terms of the relief pitching, Adam. So if Newcomb gets yanked from this game early, I don't necessarily think, depending on who comes in, I'm not sure it's actually going to be an upgrade for these Boston bats.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And when you look at their bullpen, the best guess is that who their long guy would be, even if it's a blowout, because they're going to want to get them innings, would be Kyle Wright or Colby Allard, who are 2 of their top pitching prospects. Wright's one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to get talent out of this Atlanta bullpen, really, no matter what the score is when Newcomb leaves.
Yeah, so I get it, but for me, it would be purely an ownership thing, not that I actually like this matchup. How about on the other side, Rick Porcello towing the old rubber for Boston here, Adam? You got this at SunTrust Park, favorable lefty park for hitters, below average, not even neutral for righties. This is pretty much a stay away spot for me, not because I hate it, but because I don't see it being necessary. Atlanta bats or Rick Porcello.
Not really on either side here, except for I absolutely love Freddie Freeman. He's $4,500 on DraftKings, which I think is an absolute joke. $4,100 on FanDuel. But you talk about Porcello, and he's pitched differently to righties and lefties this year. He's gotten more strikeouts against lefties at the expense of more fly balls and more home runs allowed. Freeman, tough to strike out, has plenty of power. It's a good park for left-handed power. Freeman's power numbers lately are down, but his expected slugging is much higher than his actual slugging. His expected WOBA is over 500 against right-handed pitching over the last month. So still hitting really, really well. Price tag's just a little bit deflated, at least on DraftKings. So absolutely love Freddie Freeman one-off here.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good point there. You know what else? If you look at Freddie Freeman's ISO and expected ISO, dude, they are worlds apart. On the season, not just on the season, he has a 172 ISO against righties, which is easily a career low, or at least, over the past several years. 172 ISO, Adam, 264 X ISO. I mean, his expected ISO is almost 100 points higher than his isolated slugging mark.
Yeah, I think that, and you see his price tag go down as a result of that too.
Yeah, I think so. I was trying to pull up his X slugging minus slugging. My guess is that it is towards the bottom of the league, which is a good thing, meaning that he's been very unlucky in that respect. But
I didn't look at it on a leaderboard, but I remember it had it was like a 120 point difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, from like 418 actual slugging to like 530 expected or something.
Okay, so it is one of the lowest in the entire league. One of the lowest in the entire league. If you factor in, seeing 750 pitches over on Baseball Savant, my guess is that once you narrow it down to guys that have actually seen a lot of pitches against righties this year, that Freddie Freeman is at or very close to the bottom. So I just did that, and 285. So yeah, that should give you a good idea of the bad fortune that he's had this season. All right, how about the Angels in Texas? Globe Life Park, no surprise, pretty hot and humid here. Not as bad as it's been. I mean, if you remember late July, early August, we had about 10 days straight there where it was 105 plus every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the case anymore. 84 degrees. around 70% humidity. So still very hitter friendly conditions, but it's not, these aren't what we would call Coors Southwest conditions right now. Some chance of a thunderstorm. I don't see it really postponing this game. Maybe a delay prior to first pitch or a short in-game delay, but not something I'd worry too much about because you're not playing pitchers here. Do you like bats from this game with Heaney and Mike Minor on the mound?
Sort of, but not really. So Mike Minor, I think, he's a guy that's made improvements lately. He's been throwing his changeup a lot more. He's getting a ton of swinging strikes on it, and it's made him effective against right-handed hitters. Since the start of July, a 307 expected WOBA with an 11.5% swinging strike rate for him. Since the start of August, a 232 expected WOBA with a 12.5% swinging strike rate. So that is enough to make me not really that high on Angel stacks here. I still think, obviously you can go to Mike Trout. He's really, really good in a great hitter's park. Shohei Ohtani, I think, is an interesting tournament one-off just because he's a phenomenal hitter as well, and people don't seem to realize it. And then Jabari Blash, if you are looking for just a really cheap outfielder at low ownership that actually has upside, so basically like Brandon Guyer, but the opposite, Jabari Blash is that guy. I mean, he's got a strikeout percentage pushing 40%, but the guy has massive, massive power. He's batting seventh. Nobody's going to play him. He's 3,100 on DraftKings. I think he's the absolute minimum on FanDuel. So he has that kind of upside that I don't mind, going to him as a one-off if I really need it.
Yeah, I think so too. Look, this is a game that I like it. If I'm working in stacks, I'm going to have some Globe Life Park stacks, right? I'm going to have some stacks from this game, but I'm not huge on it as you would think I should be, or on Coors Field. Believe it or not, I actually like pitching from Coors Field, Adam, and I know you do as well. But let's just take a look quickly at these lineups for the Rangers and the Angels and just work through it quickly. David Fletcher is leading off though, and if you do need a bat to punt, I don't think it's the craziest thing having him lead off. I mean, this is an Angels team with an expected run total that is towards the top of the slate tonight, even though we have 15 games. Last I looked at it, was around
plummeting.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's down to 4.3.
Oh, wow. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I guess it makes sense with that line. Jeffrey Marte, Taylor Ward, Jabari Blash, Brasino, Hermosillo. But yeah,
it's making me want to play Minor, except for that Giolito and Richards are cheaper.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to go that far, but I do think Fletcher's fine. Where do you stand on Trout here? Because you're clearly paying a premium for him. 5,600 on DraftKings. No surprise, one of the top priced bats there. 4,900, second highest priced outfielder on FanDuel. Is this a spot where you would go to Trout, or are you not interested?
No, I mean, I'm always interested in Trout. It's a great park to hit in. I don't think you need to force him in because there are plenty of outfield options. But like on DraftKings right now, I'm kind of going back and forth on a 2v2 where I had two mid-range outfielders, and now I'm looking at Trout and Blash as, just home run upside guys. So I'm not sure what I'll do there. But yeah, I mean, I do like Mike Trout quite a bit.
Yeah, so do I, because he's Mike Trout.
Yeah, exactly.
He's facing a lefty, and because he's Mike Trout. Jeffrey Marte, I've always found to be very interesting because he is somebody who's terrible against same-handed pitch. Like Jeffrey Marte against righties is hot garbage. The guy sucks. But against lefties, he's always been able to produce a decent amount of power. That's the only way he can generate any power. He's batting fifth. He's got a 202 career ISO against lefties. He does have power against them. I don't hate him if you needed to go cheap at first or third base. I don't think it's crazy to look at a Jeffrey Marte who throughout the entirety of his career, dating back to like 2015, he has hit lefties. It's literally all he's good at, and he's not even great at that. So I don't think it's crazy. I just don't have interest in really stacking this team. Curious though, your take on Texas. We talked a lot about the Angels. I know you talked briefly about the Rangers. Andrew Heaney's allowed 19 home runs this year, Adam. All 19 of them have come against righties. So he's done an impeccable job of limiting power to lefties, which you have Shin-Soo Choo, Rogner Odor, Nomar Mazara. But then you have guys like Beltre who have not hit lefties well at all. It seems the older certain guys get, whether it be Albert Pujols, Miggy Cabrera, Adrian Beltre, they stop being able to hit with the platoon advantage. Anecdotal, of course, but I'm right. It feels that way.
Well, he also stopped being able to hit righties.
But he still can hit like a rogue home run against them. I don't think he's hit a home run against lefties since we landed on the moon. I mean, it's been I'm sure he has one or two this year.
Yeah.
And
no, I mean,
he has zero home runs against lefties this year.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah, I mean, talking about Beltre, if I had any interest in him, it would be like as a cash third baseman on FanDuel at 3K. He still puts the ball in play, and Texas has a relatively high implied run total for the slate, but I don't actually really like Beltre. I certainly won't have him in tournaments.
Yeah, neither will I. I don't think Profar's crazy, but and he's at first base today, by the way.
I'd rather play Profar in tournaments than Beltre.
So would I. Oh, surely. Profar hits better from the right side of the plate. No real extreme splits, which is nice. And then you have Kiner Falefa catching. No Robinson Chirinos in the lineup today either. Not a very good lineup, especially from a stack standpoint. It's tough to feel good about this, Adam, even if you're trying to be different.
Yeah, it's pretty tough for me to get there. Like, I kind of feel the same way about Texas as I do about the Angels. I don't mind having some one-offs. I mean, there is upside in this park, but full stacks are just pretty gross.
All right, we got a question from Book It Boy. We'll do it now. He said, since we've already covered both of these players, do you like Blash or Ozuna as a one-off on DraftKings? Not Marcell Ozuna, Jose Ozuna.
Yeah. Blash. Better park, more power. Yeah. I mean, both probably get pinch hit for, because with Pittsburgh, you have no Dickerson in the lineup, and with the Angels, you have no Cole Calhoun in the lineup. So I assume both get pinch hit for, but I think Blash just has a higher ceiling.
All right. Awesemo.com says, dude, moon landing was fake. Don't get me started on that type of stuff, man. You probably won't do a show today if we start talking about all of that. We'll be going till midnight. Let's talk White Sox in Detroit. Adam, I understand that you'll probably see some chalky bats from the White Sox today. But man, I'm having a tough time not liking these guys. By the way, their run total has come down from what I saw at 5.1 down to 4.8 because it's not the greatest lineup. Abreu's on the DL. Not that that would change it because he was already out. But Tim Anderson leading off, Wellington Castillo batting third. And you had a great point earlier today that Wellington Castillo, and even in Baltimore, we always wanted Caleb Joseph behind the mound because guys like Kevin Gossman and hell, even Wade Miley fared much better with a better game caller, a better pitch framer. Castillo's terrible behind the plate. So we have him DHing batting third, which is good for him and Giolito. But I do like the Anderson, the Castillo, the Matt Davidson. The top of this lineup I like quite a bit. We'll get to Giolito, but let's talk about the hitters here for this White Sox team first.
Yeah, I wish they were running a better lineup out. I don't think they're really capable of it. But, I mean, Liriano, obviously, he puts a lot of guys on base. He walks guys. He'll give up some power. He doesn't have the same strikeout stuff that he used to. Tim Anderson is a really good play. Wellington Castillo is a good, catcher option on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, he's $2,000. So I expect he'll be one of my highest owned hitters over there just because he's a good hitter, even though he's a catcher. Matt Davidson's a really good play. And then you just get a bunch of really, 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 really bad White Sox hitters. Moncada obviously is a high upside guy, but you prefer him from the left side of the plate. So it gets tough. I mean, on FanDuel, you can go 1 through 4, but you have to use your utility spot because Jose Rondon and Anderson both are shortstops. So it's kind of tough to do that. On DraftKings, you would have to use Rondon at third base, which isn't really that exciting. So it kind of feels like the Indians to me, where I love the mini stack of like Anderson, Castillo, and Davidson, but I don't really like a whole lot else.
Yeah, it's tough. It's can I interest you in some Ryan Lamar?
I mean, can I interest you in some Adam Engel?
I actually have considered it. Like I was building a lineup.
Crazy. Like if you're running a bunch of lineups, sure, if you go ahead and 4-man the White Sox and just make sure you have exposure to every terrible White Sox hitter because they can come through, like if there's guys on base.
Yep.
But if you're talking about, making a few lineups, then it just gets pretty hard for me to go to a full stack here and like play one of these guys.
Man, it just sucks that Yoan Moncada is so bad against lefties. Like he has a 16% line drive rate and a 51% ground ball rate. I mean, he doesn't even
like
put
48% strikeout rate or something.
Yeah, he doesn't. It is 32%. He doesn't even put good balls in play against lefties.
It's bad.
I honestly, I do have, right. Right. It's a good point. I have a lineup where it's Castillo, Davidson, and then I was trying to just work a 4-man Washington stack in. It was Castillo, Davidson, Anderson, and Lamar. It's just he's further down in the lineup, and then you have Engel batting 8th, and I just can't get on board with Moncada. But like you said, if Liriano gets knocked out early, he will likely see some plate appearances against the righties. So if you're stacking, it still makes sense to get him in there. He has moved up in the lineup, but he's been bad against lefties for sure. All right, talk to me about some Lucas Giolito, because Adam, we talked about Trevor Richards' changeup. Lucas Giolito's changeup is filthy, man. And I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say, I think Lucas Giolito is actually good now.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, the pedigree's there. He would have been the number 1 overall draft pick if he didn't have an elbow injury, and he still was, first round pick by the Nats. He was the key of the Adam Eaton trade. Like he was expected to be a very, very good pitcher, and then the wheels kind of fell off once he came to the majors. But he's throwing harder now. Josh and I spent like 30 minutes talking about this guy on the show this morning. He's throwing harder now.
Did you ever think you'd spend 30 minutes on a live stream speaking about Lucas Giolito's changeup?
No, and especially not when we both agreed with each other. It wasn't like we were arguing.
It wasn't Adam's obscure take of the day.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, we pretty much were agreeing. But yeah, so I mean, you have more velocity, but also you just have a more effective changeup, both in terms of results, and you can just tell it's a different pitch. The arm side run is basically double what it was for the first couple months of the season. Different release point overall on his pitches too, which could be contributing to that. So you're getting better contact, more swinging strikes, and also if you just look at his swinging strike rate over that span, it's like a league average, basically 10.5%. But if you look at his called strike percentage and his swinging strike plus called strike percentage, he's in the top 10 among like all starting pitchers that have thrown at least 300 pitches. So he's just been very, very good at getting strikes, getting strikeouts, and also working ahead in counts, which is important. So I think that on DraftKings, he's just way, way too cheap. Even if he comes in at 20 to 25% ownership, I would want to be overweight on that. And even on FanDuel at 7,900, obviously he's going to be much lower owned because you only roster one pitcher. But I think he's in play there also in tournaments.
Yeah, I love him tonight, and this could be what burns me, but I really don't care. I mean, he's cheap. He's been you look at his split since the start of August. It's not a fluke. He's not just getting lucky. He's getting 45% whiffs per swing on his changeup. He's throwing it at a 12, 13% increase from before. But Adam, something that stood out to me, and I was really surprised to see this, is his ground ball rate. Usually when you're getting more strikeouts, you're sacrificing ground balls. But you have an interesting point saying that a lot of these are well-placed called strikes and called strikeouts, which makes more sense when you consider that his ground ball rate has gone up 15% over the last month.
Yeah, you're getting more quality contact. Pitchers, and Giolito's a guy you have to remember, in addition to his stuff not being as good as it is now, he has struggled with control. So you're talking about, just from a quality of contact perspective, him going from a guy who's constantly behind in counts and pitching in fastball counts where he's going to get blasted to working ahead in counts where hitters are guessing and not putting the same, quality of swings on pitches. So really just everything working, much better and making him a better pitcher in different facets.
Yeah, I'm all about it, man. I'm going there. Lucas Giolito time. Make it happen, baby. It's a good spot against the Detroit team that is just not good. In case you're wondering about the matchup, Detroit ranks 29th in WOBA. This is their active roster. 26th in ISO, with the 7th highest strikeout rate against right-handed pitching. Not good. You have Jim Aducci batting second. Maybe Vmart homers again, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Grayson Griner, Jacoby Jones, Del Lugo. I mean, Adam, outside of a few select characters, Candelario and Castellanos, maybe Nico Goodrum, this is not a good lineup.
Yeah, not at all. Like the
Right.
biggest concern is that they do have some speed, and if he puts guys on base, they can run. But it's just a much better spot for Giolito than it is for Tiger sitters.
That, sir, is a risk I'm willing to take. All
Yeah.
right.
Also, I
Minnesota.
think we had just talked about it earlier too. Like, while we expect Giolito to have plenty of ownership on DraftKings, I don't think it would be surprising to see some Detroit ownership as well, just because anyone who's using projections that don't take recent data into account and are looking back over the last couple of years, they're going to be much lower on Giolito and consequently much higher on Detroit, who is incredibly cheap on DraftKings. So even though Giolito will have some ownership, there's also a decent chance that he's a leverage play as well against what could be a kind of popular Detroit stack.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's not a bad point. Let's talk about Minnesota and Houston. Justin Verlander and Trevor May, which should be a bullpen game here. Do you like this game? Verlander, I mentioned it in today's article, the deep dive. It's on awesemo.com. That Verlander's a reliable cash play. Minnesota's got the lowest total on the slate at 2.7. That should surprise nobody. At the same time, though, I'm just not sure I need to get up this high. But in lineups where I can and I pair him with Giolito, I have no problem going to Verlander.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Verlander obviously is a really, really good. He's the best pitcher on the slate. It's a good matchup against a Minnesota team that's not great, but also a watered down Minnesota lineup. So there's all the upside in the world here for Verlander. The issue for me, I like him more on FanDuel than on DraftKings in tournaments. I would try to get to him in cash for sure, but in tournaments on DraftKings, he's relatively more expensive than the Robbie Ray, Rich Hill, Herman Marquez range, which makes it tougher for me to justify paying all the way up to him. But also, you're gonna, I think, see really high ownership on him, because people will go to all the cheap bats that are available and they'll put the best pitcher in their lineup. And from a tournament perspective, it just makes way more sense to me to take the field on that range of high quality arms and go lower on Verlander. On FanDuel, the ownership isn't as much of an issue because you only roster one pitcher. So on a slate like this, even if he is the highest owned pitcher, you're probably talking around 30-ish% ownership, maybe 35, but just you're not talking as high of ownership as you get on two pitcher sites. And he's relatively inexpensive. Like, he's $11,000, whereas Marquez is $9,500, and Clevenger's 99, Hill's 92. So I think it's just a little bit easier to get Verlander on FanDuel, and he'll be a little bit lower owned than he is on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think so too. Simply put, if you can fit him and you like the lineup, go ahead and do it. If not, don't feel like you can't drop down to not everyone, but a lot of these guys below him, whether it be Rich Hill, Herman Marquez, Clevenger. We'll get to Robbie Ray in just a moment. I want to get out of here in time for Jake and Josh to get theirs started up so they can move it up to lock. Are you looking at Houston bats here, not really knowing the exact rotation we're going to see out of the bullpen?
I like full stacks because whenever you see bullpen games like this, normally you get a little bit lower ownership than usual on the opposing offense. And it's obviously a very high upside offense. I also like the lineup they ran out because they have Tyler White batting fifth. So all five hitters at the top are good, and you don't have to worry about Yuli Gurriel. So I do like a full Houston stack. But as far as one-offs, we have no idea who's coming out of the Minnesota bullpen. And these guys are all, relatively expensive. So I probably won't have one-offs.
All right. How about Milwaukee and Chicago? Wade Miley's been pretty good this year. Mike Montgomery is who he is. He just doesn't give up a ton of production, but he's never a guy that you can roster.
I absolutely love Ryan Braun here. He's one of my favorite hitters on the entire slate. Reasonably priced on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Absolutely destroys lefties still. Matches up well against Montgomery's pitch mix. Really, really like Braun. Outside of that, not a whole lot of interest for me. The issue for me with Milwaukee is that they have so much pinch hit risk for guys like, Hernan Perez batting in the middle of the order there. So that makes it less appealing to me. And then on the other side, Miley's been pretty decent. The Brewers have a very good bullpen behind them. And the guys that I would want, like Baez and Chris Bryant, are priced through the roof. So basically it's Ryan Braun from this game for me.
That's it. pretty
Yep.
much.
Yep.
All right, fair enough. Let's get to some of these more interesting games, at least. Colorado and San Francisco. Herman Marquez, Derek Rodriguez. Marquez is a flat out stud right now. Not even right now. He is. He's just really good, Adam. And the struggles that we had seen at home are no longer there. He's been excellent at home recently, too. His price has come up to match his production, but man, this is not a good San Francisco team. And I can't say I'm all that concerned about Coors Field.
No, I love Marquez here, and just because of the way that the slate breaks down, I don't expect him to have much ownership, despite I think being the second most talented pitcher on the slate behind Verlander. You're just going to have people go to the safer spot in Hill. You're going to have people go to Justin Verlander. You're going to have people go to Robbie Ray in a quote unquote safer spot. So I think that all that basically is just going to leave Marquez much lower owned than he should be. And you mentioned him pitching well in Coors Field lately. We talk about the type of pitcher that does well in Coors is guys that throw hard fastballs and sliders. And Marquez, up until recently, was a hard fastball curveball guy, and he struggled at home, was phenomenal on the road. Over the last month or so, he's still throwing curveballs, but he's increased his slider usage substantially. Even on the road, he's been throwing his slider now like 25 to 30% of the time over his last handful of starts. And not coincidentally, I don't think you've seen two home starts there, one against Pittsburgh, one against the Cardinals, where he's come out and just racked up strikeouts, pitched very well. Overall, over the last month, he has over a 30% strikeout rate, about 24% to lefties, and mid 30s against righties. So just has been absolutely phenomenal here. And I think he has as much upside as anyone except Verlander, and he can come close enough to Verlander that it's worth the price difference and ownership difference for me. And then it's also just not a good San Francisco lineup. I mean, you have some strikeouts in there with Nick Hundley's a huge strikeout upgrade over Buster Posey. Longoria strikes out. Belt and Crawford are both, around 22%. Panic's really tough, but you also have, Gorky's, Chris Shaw's up from the minors. So it's just not a good San Francisco lineup either. I absolutely love Marquez.
He's a fantastic player. I love him as well. I get that it's at Coors. I get that he's not that cheap, but you'd be hard pressed to find any complaints about him right now. Even just over his last 11 starts, 11, not 4 or 5, good samples, 11 starts, a 31% K rate, 13.5% swinging strike rate, and a ground ball rate of 52%. And he's got 40+% whiffs per swing on both of his breaking pitches. And he sits 95, 96 on his fastball, and he's flashed triple-digit stuff this season. Sign me up.
And so I just went through the strikeout percentages this year for this Giants team. Blanco's at 29.3. This is against right-handed pitching. Blanco's at 29.3. Panic's at 8.3. But then Belt 22.9. Longoria 23.7. Crawford 21.9. Hundley 29.2. Chris Shaw at AAA 34.1%. And then Gorkis is at 25.6%. It's just such a good spot, I think, for Marquez.
So, are you still? Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Adam. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I tried putting these AirPods back in. They died, the damn battery died, and I put them in, and everything goes blank. So technical difficulty. Yeah, my fault. My fault. Anything else on this game here from a hitter perspective? I will add quickly that I'm just not huge on it. I mean, I think if the direction trends that this Colorado team will be, less chalk than they generally are on a Coors slate, then I'll have some interest. I have zero interest in Giants bats. Like, just it's not a good team. I don't see anything there that is going to push me on to them. But in terms of the Rockies, I think I could find a way that I get there. Just not for the Giants.
Yeah, I'm not going to the Giants. Kind of like Boston, I'll force in at least one Rocky stack just because I have respect for Derek Rodriguez. I think he's a decent pitcher. I don't think he's elite by any stretch, and he doesn't get a ton of strikeouts. So whenever you have a guy that's going to let you put the ball in play, that's nice. And then it is a good Rockies lineup too. With basically every hitter that you would want hitting in the top 6. So I do like the Rockies here in tournaments. I just think that you kind of are going to have to force them in, because it's going to be tough to fit them with like Verlander.
Yeah. And the Giants actually have a really good bullpen too. It's been strong all year, and they don't give up a lot of power. I'm probably not going there, but with this next game, Arizona and San Diego, um, Robbie Ray, Adam, here it is again. Robbie Ray in what seems like a good spot on our main slate ownership projections for DraftKings on awesemo.com. Robbie Ray, second highest owned right now at 31%. You have Verlander at 39%, Rich Hill at 18%. If Robbie Ray is going to be 30 plus percent, even 25% or higher on a 15 game slate, Adam, I'm running so quick. You'll never catch me.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot today, throughout the day. Robbie Ray, there's no question that he has upside. That's never the issue with him. And a lot of times we'll see him at high ownership, and I think it's deserved because he'll be either, like $7,600, or it'll be kind of a barren pitching slate where there's not much other, 30 plus point raw upside like Ray offers. That's not the case today. The upside is there for Ray, no question. But he's close to $9,000. So for him to actually like put you in a position where you're screwed if you don't have him, he needs to have like a 35 plus point game. If he comes out and goes for even 28 to 30, you wish you had him, but you can make up for it elsewhere. It won't be that tough with all the other pitching on this slate. And then he's going to be really highly owned. But then on top of that, he's a very volatile pitcher. I mean, if you go back the last couple of years, he's basically been incapable of pitching in Chase Field, which I was talking about in Slack earlier. I do buy into that because when Arizona put in the humidor at the beginning of this year, Ray said something, and it stuck out to me, specifically saying that he was hoping it would increase or improve his grip on baseballs at home because the balls would be more tacky. And if you look into his numbers, when he's at home, the power allowed goes up, the walks go up, the strikeouts, they're still high, but they take a little bit of a dip. The K minus walk percentage goes down. He has been much worse at home. And there was a study that came out. I don't remember who tweeted it. I saw it a couple of weeks ago. This season with the humidor and Chase, runs per game have gone down. Exit velocity has gone down. Strikeout minus walk percentage has basically stayed constant to what it was in previous seasons. So while one of the hypotheses about the humidor was that it would improve grip on pitches and subsequently control, it hasn't seemed like that's the case. And Ray has still struggled at home this year. So I buy into him being better on the road than he is at home. And while the Padres do strike out a lot, there's plenty of power in this lineup too that can get to him. So there's that. And then for him to actually have a ceiling game, not only does he need to pile up strikeouts, which he probably will, but his bigger issue is he needs to not walk guys, and he needs to not go deep in the counts so that he can get deep into the game. You're just asking for a lot of stuff to go right for Robbie Ray here at high ownership when there's several other options you can go to. So for me, I'm not going to Robbie Ray, and I will be mixing in some Padres righty power.
You know when the last time he got through 6 innings at home was?
April 18th.
Ah, yes, sir. April 18th. The last time he got through 6 innings at home. He's just been wildly inefficient right now, and that scares the hell out of me. By the way, another interesting thing about this home field stuff, Paul Goldschmidt this year against lefties at home has been awful, like unbelievably bad. And you wonder, like, why is that the case? You say, oh, it's the humidor. But then his K rate is 27% at home compared to 11% on the road. Explain that one to me, Adam.
I missed it. But you said he's been better at home or on the road?
No, he's been worse at home, but his K rate is 17% higher on the road or at home than it is on the road. It makes no sense.
Did they play a lot of home games at the beginning of the season? That would be my guess.
It's a good question. Yeah. Against lefties, it's very possible, but he's been good against lefties all year, just somehow not at home. I do want your take though on these right-handed Arizona bats against Joey Lucchesi. Good pitcher, but he has given up plenty of power to righties this year. You have Souza, Pollock, Goldschmidt, Escobar, Ahmed, Ketel Marte, who's much better from the right side of the plate. Any interest here?
I think I'm mostly interested in them as one-offs as opposed to a stack. Goldschmidt, we know, has a ton of upside. AJ Pollock is reasonably priced everywhere. So I like both of those guys. But Lucchesi is a pretty decent pitcher, and the Padres bullpen is good. So I think that full stacking them isn't really the way I want to go, but I do like, just kind of mixing in these guys and trying to get a home run here or there.
All right, let's move it along. I still like Goldschmidt here. I think the top of the order stack is nice, but I don't expect Lucchesi to get shelled either. But no, when it comes to Ray, with that type of ownership on a night where there are 5 pitchers, 6, 7 pitchers that I like, I don't feel the need to go there. We got to speed Josh. Uh, Oakland and New York Yankees, Adam, J.A. Happ, and then you have Liam Hendricks on the mound for this Oakland team, presumably what should be a bullpen day as well. I don't think I have anything from this game.
No, all I have is Oakland one-offs. You obviously have a lot of power upside in guys like Chapman, Davis, Piscotty, Mark Canha that can do some damage against Hap. But on a slate where there's a lot of heat and humidity, you're talking about like a 60-degree game in Oakland against a good pitcher in Hap and a good Yankees bullpen. So I'm not really prioritizing them. I think Hap is a guy that I would go overweight on if I'm max entering tournaments, just because nobody's going to play him at his price range, and he certainly has 30 plus point upside. But not prioritizing anything here. Frankie Montas, for anyone wondering, should be the long man for Oakland.
Yeah, I think so too. By the way, shout out to 20 Rick, says Adam is the most valuable MLB asset Awesemo has. Props to big ship my money. Let's move on here. Baltimore and Seattle. Wade LeBlanc, Alex Cobb. Interestingly enough, Alex Cobb did get beat up last game, but he has looked better recently. Now, I'm not going here today. I don't see the need to go here today. And he's just been better. But Cobb has been better outside of that last start for a myriad of reasons that I don't have time to get into. You'll just have to trust us here. Do you have any interest in LeBlanc or any in this game?
I like Nelson Cruz one-offs. That's about it. And the same caveat for Cruz. The same caveat for Cruz is for the Oakland guys. It's a tough hitter's park. It's not hot. He is cheap, and Cobb, I think, will struggle more with righties than lefties. But that's it for me.
Yeah. LeBlanc would be interesting if he wasn't this expensive. Again, don't think you need to go there. Too much quality priced pitchers elsewhere. Dodgers and the Mets. Adam, Jason Vargas on the bump. Rich Hill on the mound for the Mets. Really good matchup for him. Mets are awful against left-handed pitching. Even Todd Frazier has struggled against them this year. But Jason Vargas over his left, he's almost scrapped his usage, which had been 425 ISO this year. His changeup, however, he continues throwing that a lot, and he's been getting good results. But there are some hitters in this Dodgers team that hit changeups very well, and I just don't think the Vargas that we've seen over the last 2 starts, he's not that good. And if you're scrapping the 4-seamer that was getting hit, and you're going to rely on the sinker and the changeup, I don't know if that's going to work for you against this Dodgers squad, many of whom are underpriced in this respective matchup.
Yeah, I was waiting on the Dodgers lineup to decide my interest in them, and we just got it, and I don't like it. So
it's out. Read it on the screen.
What'd you say?
I said if it's out, read it.
Brian Dozier, Justin Turner, Manny Machado, Matt Kemp, David Freese, Kike, Chris Taylor, Austin Barnes. So all the righties.
I don't think that's bad. You just wanted some lefties so you could be different.
Yeah, I wanted lefties because Jason Vargas is much better against righties than he is against lefties. And
no, he's not.
Yeah, he is. He has one good pitch, and it sucks against lefties.
Yeah, but he still gives up plenty of power. Like I understand
I'm not saying he doesn't.
The change up against righties is a crippler, right? Like I get it. Opposite-handed hitters don't hit the, but I put it this way: I'm not worried about righties facing him.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying if they all batted left-handed and had otherwise the identical skill set, I'd be much happier.
Fair enough. So okay. So no interest in the Dodgers, or some,
no,
just not as much.
I have some interest. It's just lower than it would be if like Bellinger and Muncy were in there instead of Freese and Kike. I mean, Dozier, Turner, Machado, Kemp, I think are all really good plays. David Freese is cheap, but he's a huge pinch hit risk. Kike is a pinch hit risk. Chris Taylor's a pinch hit risk. Austin Barnes sucks. It gets much less appealing than if they actually had their good hitters in there. So I have some interest in the Dodgers, but now, for example, like I'm going to factor in more that the game's being played in LA and it's not hot than I would have if they just had all the power bats that I wanted.
Sure. For me, it's just the top four of the lineup that I'd
Yeah.
be working with, and
Yep.
they're pretty easy to fit. Dozier struggled against lefties, but his career numbers say otherwise. Like his entire career, he's been good against them. I can't imagine this goes on forever, but the season is almost over, and I've been saying this since like May. So
He's been picking up a little bit over the last month or two against lefties. He has like a 355 xWOBA.
yeah, no, it's definitely improving. Still underwhelming for the most part, though. Real quick take on Rich Hill. I already said I think there's a really good spot for Rich Hill. I don't think he's a must play because we have a lot of other options priced around him, but I think it's a really, really nice high upside spot for Rich Hill here.
Yeah, I really like Hill a lot as well. I like Marquez a little bit more in tournaments just because he'll be lower owned. But in cash games, I love Hill. He's been just so good since coming back from the disabled list, a month and a half, 2 months ago, getting a ton of strikeouts, faces a good Mets team for, pitchers. They strike out a ton. They can't hit. So, yeah, I really like Rich Hill a lot. I expect that he'll be pretty highly owned, like a little bit lower than Verlander, but probably more than every other expensive pitcher. But I do really like him a lot.
All right, Mr. Mike's daddy says, Laffy, get some new blinds. I have these blinds. I got to get blackout blinds. That's what I got to do. You're right. I'll send you my address. We can ship them over here right away. All right, let's quickly go through the positions. Top pitchers, Adam, go.
Herman Marquez, Justin Verlander, Rich Hill, Lucas Giolito.
Okay, all of the same guys for me. I will add Trevor Richards in there as well if you want to be a bit different. Catcher, give me Wellington Castillo, give me Yadier Molina. What about you?
Same, and add Austin Hedges.
All right, first base, go.
Freddie Freeman. And I love Freddie Freeman, but Edwin Encarnacion I think is a really good play. Matt Davidson.
Yeah, Davidson number one for me. Paul Goldschmidt and Edwin Encarnacion. Second base, give me. I guess you got to throw Dozier in there, Munoz, and I will say Fletcher. He's just very cheap. I don't have an issue with him. Him or Ketel Marte if you want to go there. There are some cheap bats if you need. Go ahead.
Munoz, Dozier. If you wanted a cheap guy other than Munoz, Luis Urias, just to create leverage against Robbie Ray.
How about third base?
Matt Carpenter, Jose Ramirez, and Matt Chapman.
All right, give me Justin Turner in there as well. Shortstop, Tim Anderson, Manny Machado, and Paul DeJong. Those are my three. Go ahead.
DeJong, Anderson, and Machado as well. If you wanted like a completely unknown value guy, you could go to Asdrubal Cabrera or Adalberto Mondesi.
All right, spout off some outfielders for me.
Bryce Harper, Tommy Pham, Ryan Braun, Nelson Cruz, Mike Trout, Jabari Blash, everyone on the Rockies, Shohei Ohtani, Matt Kemp.
All right. That'll do it for us. For all of you waiting for the Up to Lock show, I apologize for running a bit late. We're still working out some of the logistics, but what we will do from now on is just start this show. Not that there's a ton of baseball left. Start this one at 4:45, 4:30 on days where there's a lot of games. Don't want to run into these guys' show. Won't happen again. Thanks for watching. This is The Deeper Dive. Dave Locker and Adam Shar. We'll see you back here tomorrow, same time. Good luck tonight.